Oh, no, no, no. Fuck you.
Hey everyone, how's it going? The roads here suck here, coming at you live from new coronavirus city. Recent events happened and people are walking around with surgical masks and buying out all the toilet paper. They have to know that they're stupid, right? That's a long story for another time, but anyways, I have this many. 205,151 miles on the odometer. So it's time for another oil change. And you guys know how this goes. First, I talk about what I got and why. Then I do the oil change. If there's anything else that needs doing, I'll do it as well. And then maybe if there's something that's upcoming or something that I'm keeping an eye on, I'll let you know as well. First, like I was saying, let's talk about what we got here. So I was driving and I knew that I needed to do an oil change. So I passed by an auto parts store and decided to pick up some oil. Let's see. Normally I get Castrol, but this is the only thing that they had that was synthetic, high mileage. So I ended up getting 6 little quarts instead of one big and one small of Mobil 1 10W30 high mileage formula motor oil. Like I said, normally I use Castrol, but it doesn't really matter that much. So long as it's API SAE certified, we're good. And of course, so long as it's a name brand. If it's a name brand and if it's certified, 10W30 is 10W30. With the high mileage formula, of course. And it's synthetic. So, you know, no real big deal here. It's just, that's why I'm using a different oil. Of course, there was an oil change special where if you buy 5 quarts of motor oil and a filter, it costs, I don't know, like $30 or something like that. And the filter is a Mobil 1 extended performance filter. So that's going to be fun as well. And while I was buying this stuff, you know, the cashier, I guess he was an Italian kind of type of dude, so just try to imagine this. He comes up with this funnel and this drain pan, and he looks at me, he points to it, and he goes, "Free." So I'm like, okay, free is good. So yeah, went to an Advanced Auto Parts, got oil and a filter, and ended up with a funnel and a drain pan as well. So I've been driving this car earlier today, so the oil is hot. I want to let it cool down a little bit. Once that happens, we'll get to changing the oil. And depending on how I'm feeling, maybe I'll also grease up all the greasable joints under the car as well, since I'm there. So I'll see you guys in some 30 minutes and we'll change the oil. So, the back wheels are chocked, the front wheels are up on ramps, the car's on the ramps, the parking brake is engaged, and it's going to be time to change the oil. There's some liquid here, but that looks like let's get to work. course, while I wait, I'm going to take this drain plug and I'm going to wipe it off with a paper towel, just clean it up a little bit. Now, we've also given it, I don't know, about 30 minutes to let it drip, to get as much out of it as possible. And the next step is going to be to take out the filter and to let that drain as well. It seems that this textured grip on the Fram oil filter is like flaking off, and it's causing it to be difficult to use the wrench on it. But I got it loosened up a little bit, so the rest should be easy. And again, we're just going to let this thing drip dry for a little bit. I don't know, I'd say about 30 minutes should do. And this is very important. Always, always, always check to make sure that the gasket came off. With this Fram filter, the gasket did not come off. See that? Very important. This has to come off or stay with the filter. This is the first time I've actually ever had this happen. I don't know whether to blame the filter, because this is the first time I've ever used a Fram filter, and this is supposedly their best filter. Maybe it's a freak accident, but first time I've ever had this happen. And in case, like I said, we're gonna let this drip for a bit. So we'll be back. So, I ended up doing the pedestrian thing and walking to the auto parts store to pick up a drain plug gasket. It's a funny story, I guess, and I'll talk more about it later, because right now I just want to get the work done while it's still light outside. But there were 2 gaskets in this here container, and I already put one on. The plastic part, it fits pretty tightly around the threads, and I had to sort of like screw this on by hand. And the metal part fits nicely within the groove of this drain plug. So I imagine this is a perfect fit. So I'll go ahead and put everything together now that the oil has been dripping out for, I don't know, like an hour and a half at this point. Yeah, you can see the groove in there. Pretty good. So, yep, like I said, talk about it later. Work now. Now, we want to put this on so that it's snug. Not crazy tight, but snug. That's important. It has to be snug enough so that nothing leaks out or anything, but it cannot be too tight. I just do it by hand. Yep, that is definitely snug. Okay. Now I clean up the part where the oil filter screws on. See? Clean. Now we have to get the new oil filter and we have to put oil on the gasket. Again, not crazy tight, just snug. I would call that snug. So this is snug, that is snug. Now we just add the new oil. And that's it, that's the oil changed. I wasn't such a fan of the Fram filter, so I'm gonna save it up for the next time I decide to cut open filters. Right, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to grease up the joints that have, that can be greased, especially since it's still light outside. So I'm gonna go handle that real quick. There is a fitting here on both, so this is gonna be on both sides of the car, but there's a fitting here, a fitting here, and a fitting up here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that real quick. So, that would be it. The oil has been changed, and the joints that could be greased were greased. For the other side of the car, I think I forgot to turn on the camera, but, I have one side, so just imagine it's the same for the other side. It is a little bit stubborn, but It's not too difficult. Now that this is the last part of the video, I should explain if there's anything wrong or has been going wrong or anything like that. So I do want to change the air filter, but I think I'll do that when I change spark plugs, because I want to change the spark plugs. I think the fuel economy in this car is just slightly off, and I think it's getting to the point where changing the plugs is probably a good idea, especially since I got this car around 120,000 miles, and now I have, you know, almost, well, 210,000. Right now I have 205,000, but soon it's going to be 210,000. It's almost going to be 100,000 miles since I got the car, and I don't even know if the previous owner changed the spark plugs. When I change the spark plugs, I also have to take off the intake manifold, which means I'm going to have to take off the gasket and replace the gasket. So spark plugs, intake manifold gasket, intake filter, and while I'm there I might as well as do the belt, because it's starting to show just a little bit of cracks in it. Nothing serious, nothing concerning, but might as well as change it. So that's where I'm off with like immediate maintenance. What's next ish, I guess. Let's see, problems. The sunglasses thing, it has like a plastic little nipple or a plastic little hinge, I guess you could say, and on this side it broke off, so this doesn't work anymore. The next time I go to a junkyard, I'll just look, you know, I'll either look for this whole thing, but if I could just pull off this little door, that'll be fine. It's not a big deal. Let's see, what else? The air conditioner. So it was winter and I haven't been using the air conditioner, and now that it's been getting warmer, I've turned it on and it's making like a hissing slash humming noise, or it was making a hissing slash humming noise. I don't quite know how to describe this other than if you've ever been scuba diving, when you attach a regulator to the scuba tank and you turn the scuba tank to let the air start coming out, it does make a little bit of a hissing noise, but it also makes a little bit of a humming noise, like a So I decided to go to AutoZone. This was a few days ago. I decided to go to AutoZone and get one of those AC air conditioning refill kits, I guess you could say, that has a little bit of a gauge on it, tells you how much pressure is in the system, and it was very low, so it's as if all the coolant or refrigerant came out of the system. So I, you know, injected a bunch of the refrigerant, I believe it's R134A, into the air conditioning system through the low port. So if you ever need to do this, if you look into the engine, the top skinny port is the high pressure port, and the fatter lower port is the low pressure port, and the cap is underneath, so you have to just kind of go underneath the pipe and pull the cap off. You plug in the hose, you recharge the air conditioner. The compressor, it'll cycle on and off, but right now where the needle on this gauge would sit would be like so if this is the green zone, then the needle would be here, and then the compressor compresses and let's go, compresses and let's go. So this is where it's at now. Normally you should not be refilling the AC because it's an airtight system. Theoretically, refrigerant should not be coming out of it. If it is, that would mean that there's a leak. But it's been, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, and so far so good. Maybe it's a one-time thing. The refrigerant that I added claims to have some sort of chemicals that will stop small leaks, like a O-ring going bad, like a crusty O-ring or something like that. So maybe I just got lucky and caught the problem when there was like a little bit of a hairline crack in the system somewhere and it sealed it or something. I don't know, but so far so good. And if it is leaking at the rate of having to refill it once every 5 years, I don't really care either. But it was concerning, but now it seems perfectly fine. That covers that. Let's see, what else? I do have a cover for this. Let me show you actually. So the last time that I went to the junkyard, I actually pulled this cover off because this emblem, I don't know if you could see, is cracked, and that just pisses me off. So I found one with an emblem that isn't cracked. Taking it on and off is pretty pretty easy. It's just these plasticky bits that like pull on and off. There's like a set of like bolts. There's like a bolt going through here and a bolt going through here. You undo the bolts, this whole front part of the steering wheel comes off, and then with a screwdriver you can undo these tabs. The only questionable part of it is these wires, which are for, I think, the horn, but there's like a little connector in there, and I pulled these wires out. So yeah, I'm gonna have to probably do the same with that and then connect these. And I guess I've just been putting it off for a later time, but that is a thing. The emblem did crack, so letting you guys know that at 205,000 miles you might have a cracked emblem. Yeah, this needs cleaned. As far as maintenance and things that have broken go, that's that. And now, as I promised, I have to tell you about the gasket for the oil drain plug. So let me just put this away. So the story about the gasket. As you guys may have noticed, when I went down to inspect the oil pan, there was like a slight seepage of oil coming from the drain plug. And I was just confused by it, but when I took the drain plug off, I saw that there was like an indentation, as if a O-ring or a gasket had to go on or something. And lo and behold, I went on the internet and found out that these were a thing. So for 5 years, my dumb ass has been driving this car without a gasket on the drain plug. You know, this wasn't ever a serious thing. So what happened was, when I first got this car, I had to take it in for an oil change when it was time. Because when I tried to do the oil myself, the drain plug was stuck on so hard. Like, the previous owner must have taken this to oil change places, and I don't know if they ever even took the damn thing off, or if they used pneumatic tools to put it back on, or I don't know what the story with that is, but it was so stuck that I used several tools to try to get it off. And, you know, in the attempt of trying to get it off, like, I ended up stripping the head of the bolt. So I had to take it to a mechanic who used a socket that had like teeth in it that would go over it and dig into it to try to get it out. And then he ended up giving me a new drain plug. But I guess he omitted the gasket, because I just never had a gasket on there, and I just thought that was normal, that was the way it should be. But lo and behold, I guess this Fram filter was so bad that it put enough pressure on the system to cause a little bit of seepage to come out. And now I noticed that was a thing, so there we go. We made that right. We learn something new every day, but goddamn, I'm an idiot. Like I said, no catastrophic failure or anything like that, but yeah. See, the thing with this car is that, I don't know, between oil changes, so every 5,000 miles, I did have to add about a quart or 2 quarts of oil. And I thought, over time, you know, I was concerned initially, but over time I thought that was normal, because when I look on the internet, a lot of Chrysler 300 owners are reporting the same problem, that their engine consumes too much oil. And it's something of a well-known trick that some car manufacturers used in the mid-2000s to improve fuel economy, is to just burn a little bit of oil. Because how do you get more efficiency out of an engine? You reduce the amount of friction that is inside there. So there's that. Then this car is slightly older, and other Chrysler 300 owners are saying that was a problem. And you know, it never got so dangerously low that it was, you know, hurting anything. It's just I checked it every once a week or 2 weeks and topped it off. So maybe this will fix that. We'll see. Because it was strange. When I drove from New York to Pennsylvania, there would be just a little bit of oil that was like less, I guess you could say. But from Pennsylvania to New York, it's perfectly fine. Driving all around in Pennsylvania, perfectly fine. Driving all around in New York City, perfectly fine. But over that mountainous road from New York to Pennsylvania, that's when I lost a little bit of oil each time. So, I mean, maybe it has to deal with, you know, just a little bit higher pressure in the system, causing that, I guess. But now that we have a gasket in there, hopefully that's fixed. But yeah, funny story. Now we have a gasket. Make sure you have a gasket. At the next oil change, I'll report back to you guys and see if that fixed the quote-unquote normal oil consumption. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, like it. If you want to subscribe, subscribe. And see you next time. Bye-bye. Be good. Stay safe. Now that I changed my oil, I can go leave this city before it turns into an escape from New York type of scenario. New COVID city, right? Coronavirus. Anyways, all that's left for me to do is to clean up, put the old oil into the little plastic jugs for recycling, and yeah, I'll take it around the block, make sure everything's nice and tight, no oil is leaking or anything like that, and yeah, bye-bye. You wanna love me in your car.